这个故事，如果你听起来不累，那么你的英语能力在美国日常生活是完全够用的。引入尘烟由于真实反映中国农民的困境而被禁，堪称中国的悲惨世界。我们开始吧。
Ma Yudi was a poor farmer. He lived in a small, poor village in rural China. It was a place where life was hard and people had very little money. He was 40 years old, and he lived with his older brother's family. But he did not live in the house. He lived in a small, dark shed, and his only roommate was the family donkey. His daily life was simple. Wake up before the sun, work all day in his brother's fields, eat a simple meal, and sleep. He spent more time with the donkey than with people. He understood the animal, and the animal seemed to understand him. To his brother, Ma Yutong, he was a burden. Yutong now had a new problem. Yutong's son needed to get married, and the bride's family did not want a poor uncle living in the donkey shed. Yudi had to go. There was another person in the village who was also a burden. Her name was Chao Guying. She lived with her own brother and sister-in-law. They had treated her badly for many years. Because of the beatings, her body was damaged. She could not walk correctly, her hands trembled all the time, and she could not control her bladder. She was also sick and could not have children. Her family wanted to get rid of her. A matchmaker saw an opportunity. She arranged a meeting between the two families. Yudi's brother and Guying's brother sat at a small table. They ate and talked. Ma Yudi and Cao Guying sat in the corner on small stools. They were the subjects of the meeting, but they were not important. Yudi's brother quickly made an offer. He would give Guying's family 200 yuan. The deal was done. They were taken to the town to get a marriage certificate. Then they took a photograph. The photographer told them to stand close together in front of a bright red cloth. They looked nervous and did not smile. They were now husband and wife. Ma Yutong gave them a place to live. It was an empty house on the edge of the village. The real owner had moved to the city. The house was cold and empty. It was made of mud and straw. The only wedding decoration was a single piece of red paper. Yudi cut it into a special shape that means happiness and pasted it on the cracked mud wall. This was their new home. On their wedding night, Yudi fell asleep quickly. He was tired from a long life of work, but Guying could not sleep. She sat on the edge of the kang, the mud brick bed. She was terrified. This new man was her husband. She remembered the beatings from her brother. She thought, "Will he beat me too?" Her body began to tremble. She was so nervous that her bladder released. A dark, wet spot spread on the mattress. Guying froze. She felt a hot shame. She was waiting for him to wake up and shout at her. The donkey in the shed outside began to make a loud sound. The sound woke Yudi. He sat up, and in the dim light, he saw Guying sitting perfectly still. He put his hand down and felt the wet mattress. Guying's whole body pulled back quickly. She held her breath. She prepared for the anger. Yudi said nothing. He simply stood up and put on his shoes. He went outside into the cold night air. Guying watched him go. She thought, "He is getting a stick to hit me." She heard him feeding the donkey. After a few minutes, he came back inside. He did not look at her. He walked to the small, cold stove. He quietly added more coal, making the fire bigger. The room slowly began to feel warmer. He took off his shoes, climbed back onto the kang, and went back to sleep. Gai Ying stared at him. There was no shouting. There was no beating. Later, when she was sure he was asleep, she quietly slipped off the bed. She stood next to the warm stove, trying to dry her wet pants in the heat. Yuti opened his eyes and watched her for a moment in the darkness, but he did not speak. The next day, Yuti took Gai Ying to the desert. He was taking her to his family graves. There were no stones, only small mounds of dirt in the empty land. He lit incense. He told his dead parents, "This is Gai Ying. We are married now." After the ritual, he unpacked the offerings. He had a momo, a steamed bun. He offered it to Gai Ying. She pulled her hands back. She was afraid to take it. In her whole life, no one had ever offered her food so gently. Yuti misunderstood. He thought she was afraid to eat food from a grave offering. "It is okay," he said softly. He took a large bite of the bun himself. The living must eat it. If we do not eat, the dead cannot receive it. He offered it to her again. Her hands were shaking, but she took the bun. She took a small bite. It was just a plain bun, but it was the kindest thing anyone had ever given her. She looked at her new husband. For the first time, she felt a little bit safe. Their life together began. It was a life of simple, hard work, but a new problem arrived very quickly. The village chief called a meeting. The richest man in the area, Zhang Yongfu, was very sick. He needed a special kind of blood, Rh negative, the panda blood. And Ma Yuti was the only person in the entire village who had this blood. Zhang Yongfu's son came to Yuti's small house. He wore an expensive leather jacket and a gold chain. The village chief and other men crowded into the tiny room. The air felt heavy. Yuti was scared. "I do not want to go," he whispered. Zhang's son smiled. "It is not a choice. We can bring the medical car to your house if you refuse." Yuti had to go. Gai Ying was terrified. She grabbed Yuti's shirt and would not let go. They had to take her with them. She had never been in a car before. The movement of the expensive BMW made her very sick. She vomited on the side of the road. Then, from fear, she wet the leather seat. "Are you an animal?" Zhang's son screamed at her. At Zhang's large modern house, a nurse was waiting. There was a big table full of expensive food for the medical staff. Yuti and Gai Ying were told to sit in the corner. They did not dare to eat. The nurse took Yuti's blood for a test. "It is good. His blood is clean." Immediately, Zhang's wife brought 2 large plastic sheets. The plastic made a loud, crinkling sound. She covered the chairs with the plastic before she allowed Yuti and Gai Ying to sit down. They did not want their furniture to touch the dirty poor. After Yuti gave blood, he felt weak. Their new life needed to start, so he went to the village store. He needed seeds for the spring. He needed fertilizer. He had no money. He had to ask the store owner to let him pay later. The men sitting in the store laughed at him. "What is this? You give your blood to the richest man in the county, but you have no money for seeds?" Gai Ying stood behind him, feeling the shame. The stress and the bad feeling were too much. She wet her pants again. The men pointed and laughed louder. Gai Ying tried to hide. She turned her back to the men, but she could not stop their laughter. Yuti saw what was happening. He finished his business quickly. He said nothing to the men. He quietly walked to Gai Ying. He took off his own long, dusty coat. He put it over her shoulders. The coat was long. It covered her wet pants completely. He protected her dignity. That night, his brother Yu Tong came to their house. Yutong's son was getting married in the city. He needed someone to haul the new furniture. Yutong did not want to pay for a truck. "Yuti, you have a donkey. You will go." Yuti had to obey. He went to the city. While he was there, he saw a long, dark coat for sale in a market. He thought, "This would be good for guying. It is long. It would always cover her." The coat cost 100 yuan. He checked his pocket. He only had 50 yuan. Just then, Zhang Yongfu's son saw him. "Old Fourth, you are here!" He saw Yuti looking at the coat. He bought it immediately. "A gift, a small payment for your good blood." Yuti tried to refuse. "I cannot take this." "Nonsense. Take it." The man pushed the coat into Yuti's arms, and left Yuti felt terrible. He shouted at the departing car, "This is not a gift. I am borrowing this. This is a loan." He finished the work for his brother after this. It was very late and dark when he returned. Yutong was angry. "You are so slow. You wasted the whole day." He shouted at Yuti for a long time. Yuti finally walked back to his own dark house. The wind was cold. He saw a small light at the entrance to the village. It was Guy-ying. She was standing in the freezing wind, holding a flashlight to light his way home. He was tired and angry from his brother. He felt a flash of anger, but it was really worry. "Why are you waiting here in the cold?" he said. "Go home. You will get sick." Guy-ying pulled back. She did not speak. She just reached inside her own thin shirt. She pulled out a glass bottle of water. She pushed it into his hand. The bottle was still warm. She had been holding it against her body to keep it hot for him. He suddenly realized what this meant. She went home when the water got cold. She heated it and came back. How long has she been waiting? His anger melted. He took the hot bottle and felt the warmth spread into his cold hands. He looked at his wife. He took the new coat, the one from the city, and wrapped it tightly around her. Their life continued. They went to a neighbor's house to borrow 10 eggs. They wanted to raise chickens. While they were there, they watched the neighbor's television. The program was about piranhas. "They are very dangerous fish," the TV said. "They wait, and when a weak animal falls into the water, they attack it." As they watched, Guiying's bladder failed again. The neighbor saw the wet spot on her stool. "You are a plague god," the woman shouted. "Get out of my house." Yuti and Guiying ran away. They felt terrible. But that night, Yuti built a special box. He put the 10 eggs inside. He fixed a light bulb inside the box to keep them warm. He made small holes in the cardboard. The light from the bulb shone through the holes. It looked like the dark mud walls were covered in tiny, beautiful stars. Guiying sat and watched the lights. She had never seen anything so beautiful. Soon the government started a new program. They would pay 15,000 yuan to tear down any empty, unused houses. The man who owned their house returned from the city. "You must leave," he said. "I am tearing this house down to get the money." They were homeless again. They watched a big machine push the walls down. The red happiness paper fell into the dirt. Yuti walked into the ruins. He found a small bird's nest, a swallow's nest, that had fallen. He picked it up gently. "The swallows will need this when they return," he said. They moved into another empty house, and for the second time, Yuti pasted the red happiness paper on the wall. They decided they could not live like this. They needed their own home. They would build one themselves. They started the long, difficult work of making mud bricks. Yuri dug the mud. Guying carried the water. They mixed it with straw and pressed it into a wooden mold. They set the bricks in the sun to dry. As they were working, Zhang Yongfu's son returned. His father was sick again. "Old Fourth, we need more blood." This time Guiying stood in front of Yuri. "No, you cannot take him. He is weak." Zhang's son just looked at her. He pointed at the long coat she was wearing. "That is a nice coat. Does it fit you well?" The threat was clear. Yuri had to go. It was the second time. The car seats were covered in plastic again. The windows were open, and the cold wind blasted their faces one night. A terrible rainstorm began. The wind was very strong, and the rain fell hard. Yuri woke up in panic. "The bricks!" he shouted. "The new bricks will be ruined!" He and Guying both ran out into the storm. They tried to cover the rows of drying mud bricks with a large plastic sheet, but the wind was too strong. It ripped the plastic from their hands. They were soaking wet. Suddenly, Yuri slipped in the deep mud. He fell flat on his back. Guying tried to help him. She fell right on top of him. They were completely covered in mud. Their work was ruined. Everything was lost. Yuri looked at the sky. He looked at his wife. A strange sound came from his chest. He began to laugh. It was a deep, helpless laugh. Guying looked at him, surprised. Then she began to laugh too. They sat in the mud, in the middle of the storm, laughing at the sky. After the rain stopped, they sat by their ruined bricks. Guying was quiet. She was weaving something from straw. She finished it and gave it to Yuri. It was a small, delicate donkey. "I used to think," she said softly, "that I lived a life worse than a donkey. But now, it is a good life. You are a good person." The house grew slowly. Their love grew with it. Zhang Yongfu's son came back a third time. This time, the meeting was at night in a dark room. The nurse was nervous. Yuri was very weak. The blood dripped slowly. He was barely strong enough to ask Zhang's son to pay the villagers the money he owed them. Zhang's son agreed. He paid the villagers, but he cheated them. He paid them with corn at a very high price. Yuri got his corn. The first thing he did was take a large portion. He gave it to Zhang's son. "This is to pay for the 2 coats," he said. Zhang's son smiled and took the grain. Summer came. It was time for the harvest. They worked in the fields from morning until night. Yuri was lifting the heavy bundles of wheat onto the cart. He asked Guying to help lift one. She tried. Her body trembled with effort. But she was not strong enough. She fell, and the bundle collapsed. Yuri was hot, tired, and angry. "You are useless," he shouted. "You only know to eat." Nearby farmers heard him and laughed. Yuri saw their faces. He instantly realized what he had done. He had become one of them. He had become a piranha. Guying was terrified. She pulled her body small, crying silently. She had wet herself again. Yuri's heart broke. He said nothing. On the walk home, he was quiet. He stopped the donkey. He gently pulled Guying onto the cart. He took a single grain of wheat. He pressed it onto her arm. The grain left a small, perfect mark, like a tiny flower. "This is my mark," he whispered. "I put my mark on you. Now you can never be lost. I will always find you." A few days later, Guying's skin was red and itchy. She had a bad rash from the wheat chaff. Yuri took her to the canal. "You must wash." She was terrified of the water. "No, I cannot." "It is okay. I will hold you." He gently helped her into the water. He carefully washed her back. It was the most intimate they had ever been. Finally, the house was finished. It was beautiful. Yuri climbed to the roof. He put the swallow's nest he had saved under the eaves. A home for them, too. The owner of the second house came. "You must leave. I am tearing this one down, too." This time, Yuri smiled. They packed their few things. He took the red happiness paper from the wall. They walked to their own house. For the third and final time, he pasted the red paper on his own front wall. That night, they lay on their new kang. It smelled of fresh mud and straw. Guy smiled. She took a grain of wheat and pressed a flower onto his arm. "Now you are marked too." They talked about the future. "When we sell all this grain," Yuri said, "we will have money. We will buy a television, and I will take you to a big hospital in the city. We will fix your problems." "A big hospital?" Guy whispered. "Can we?" "Yes," he said. "Life will be good." A few days later, Yuri's brother Yutong arrived. He was carrying leftover food from a banquet. "Brother, I have wonderful news. The government is giving apartments to the poor. I got one for you. You only have to pay 10,000 yuan. Yuri shook his head. "I do not want it. This is my home. Where would my donkey live? Where would my chickens live?" Yutong became angry. "You are a fool. I already paid the 10,000 yuan for you. You must take it." Yuri did not understand his brother's plan. Yutong knew Guiying could not have children. He knew Yuri was weak. When Yuri died, the 200,000 yuan apartment would legally go to Yutong's son. He was buying it for himself, using Yuri's name. Autumn came. Guiying suddenly got a high fever. She lay on the kang, weak and afraid. "I am a cheap body," she whispered to Yuri. "My whole life I was hungry and cold, but I was never sick. Now we have a home, life is good, and I get sick. Maybe I am not made for a good life." Yuri was very worried. He cooked her the very first egg that their new chickens had laid. "Eat this, you will be strong." He had to go to the fields to harvest the corn. He left her to rest. Later that day, Guiying felt a little better. She thought about Yuri working alone. She wanted to bring him food. She got up, her body still weak. She took a steamed bun and another hard-boiled egg. She began the long, slow walk to the fields. She reached the bridge at the edge of the village. The group of villagers, the piranhas, were sitting there, talking about other people. As she walked past them, her fever made her dizzy. She stumbled. Her weak body could not recover. She fell from the bridge into the deep canal water. The villagers stopped talking. They watched her fall. They watched her struggle in the water. She was too weak to swim. She was drowning. No one moved. No one shouted for help. No one reached out a hand. They just watched. Like the piranhas on the television, they watched the weak animal drown. When Yuri returned hours later, his cart full of corn, a villager told him. "Your wife, she fell in the canal." He ran. He jumped into the water and searched like a crazy man. He found her. He pulled her body onto the bank. She was cold and still. Her hand was closed very tight. He had to open her fingers. Inside, she was still holding the bun and the egg she was bringing for him. He lay on the ground, holding her body, and screamed her name to the empty sky. Yuri went to the photo studio in town. He gave the photographer their wedding picture. He asked for it to be enlarged. It would be her funeral photo. He went home. He took down the red happiness paper from the wall. He hung her picture in its place. He cooked their chickens. He placed the food and the last of the eggs on a table for her. He bought her a red wedding dress, the one she never had. He dressed her body in it. He took a grain of wheat. He pressed a final flower onto her cold, still arm. He buried her in the desert, next to his parents. He burned a paper television for her. It was the promise he could not keep. He went back to the house. He walked to his donkey. He took off its harness. "Go," he said, his voice empty. "You are free. You have worked for humans your whole life. Go." The donkey did not move. It just stood and watched him. He walked away from the donkey and went to sell his grain. He sold all of his grain, his entire harvest. The grain buyer cheated him on the weight, and the price Yuri did not argue. He took the money. He walked to the village store. He paid his full debt for the seeds. He walked to his neighbor's house. He gave the woman 10 eggs. "I borrowed these," he said. He had paid all his debts. He was free too. He walked home to their empty house. He looked at her picture. He sat on the kang and ate the last egg, the one she was bringing to him. He picked up a dark bottle of poison. He drank all of it. He lay down. He held the small donkey made of straw, the one she had made for him in the rain. He took a grain of wheat. He pressed a flower onto his own hand. He lay still, waiting to find her. A few days later, Yutong's son came. He took Yuti's chickens and his pig. Yutong told the village, "I have taken my brother to the city. He is living a good life with me." Now the house was officially empty. Yutong collected the 15,000 wen tear-down money. The city apartment was now legally his son's. A big machine arrived. It pushed the walls of the new house. The house Yuri and Guying had built with their own hands fell down. It all turned back into dust.
太棒了，你把故事听完了，你离英语自由又近了一步。欢迎加入频道会员，支持频道发展。会员可获得影片的中英文对照学习资料、跟读练习视频、影片、MP3 文件等福利。这里是像学母语一样学英语频道，我们下个视频见。